Hello, friend, and welcome to Art, Creativity, and Wellbeing, the show where we are always working to help you feel like you can receive the same kind of love and care that you give. Um, Welcome. I am Kay Lock Cope. I am a coach and a creator, and I think I'm coming to you today with my creator hat absolutely on. I'm very excited. I'm taking you into my art sale today. So I've just started an art sale at my website. And what I wanted to do with this episode of the show was to, which is really kind of a bonus episode, I think, um, was to take you into some of the pieces that I've made and like the stories behind them. And I'm recording this in video and audio, so I'll do my best to, for those of you listening, like as you're driving or something like that, to describe what we're seeing. Um, and I feel like as an artist, I think this is coming up for a couple reasons. One is I've been painting basically all year, and I haven't shared almost any of it. It's just been such a buck wild year for me, for my family, and I I don't personally feel like a piece of art is complete until it's been shared. And it's always interesting to me to hear from people about what you know what they think of the art and what it evokes for them and the memories or the things that I get to be taken into when someone shares about that with me. And so I thought I would give you today um, some of my own, I don't know, the kind of stories behind the art, I guess. And especially because a lot of this is stuff that no one's seen before because I just haven't been able to share about it. So art is such a processing, um, creative flow activity for me that I've created a lot more art than I've had the time to share this year. So I'm going to take you first into, I think we'll do the fiddly bits first, like the tougher to, the more challenging to like show because they're not framed or under a kind of paper that would preserve them, but would also make it so that you couldn't see them very well. And that is my pastel work. So gosh, and where will I start? I think I'm gonna go smaller to bigger. We'll do that. I love to create. Sometimes I'll do series or very um, individual, but very, very small works. And so I have a couple of small things to share today. This one is one that I've literally just finished. Like I took it off the easel to bring to you. And for those of you listening, well, or looking, I suppose, it is of, I was driving home. So this is of a scene about 2 miles from my home where I now live in Maine. And I drove up this rise that I come up all the time because that's how I get home. And the full moon had just come above the land, the ground. And I like stopped the car, pulled over, and just marveled at it. And then when I got home, I was like, I have to paint this. I must paint this. And so this is a 2.5 by 3.5 inch um, very sweet little painting of the full moon that I saw not 3 weeks ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago that I saw this. And have I even been home? I've been recently on a retreat to Spain, and I'm like, have I even been home for 3 weeks? I think it'll be 3 weeks on Friday that I got home. So that, that puts the time frame. And it was after I got home. And it's one of two little minis that I made. And I actually made it from, I'd had a series of like six minis that were sunsets seen from just over near where I live, like next door to where I live is this great big wonderful rolling field. And I walked out up to that field one day in October, early October, and the sunset was just, I just was gaping over it. So I came home from that and I made six sunsets, like little tiny mini sunsets, some of them oriented portrait, some of them oriented landscape. This one that I'm holding up for you is oriented landscape. So it's like wider than it is taller. And two of those I was just not super happy with. So what I did with them was I brushed off as much pastel as I could, and I turned them into these two moonrise pictures. So we've got four sunsets and two moonrises in that series. And yeah, and so that's the first one that I wanted to take you into. And I wanted to share, I'm going to put this down, and I wanted to share a couple more mini pieces. They're called mini, they're just called minis, miniature paintings. And it sounds like it's quite a typical or a common. They're about the size of like a Pokemon card. In fact, they're the exact size of a Pokemon card. And they're very fun. The way that I like to ship them, the way that if you decide to purchase one or more at my website in this sale, they will arrive. So this is another one that I did this year of last autumn at a favorite place of mine. And you can see it's in, like, you can even hear the crinkling probably. In fact, I wanted to say this too. I probably sound different because usually I would be using a microphone. I would have earphones on and to try and get the best sound quality. And I was like, I can't do that and also work with all the art that I wanted to show you today. Um, so uh, less good sound, but hopefully some fun things that couldn't be shown if the sound was better. So you might be able to hear this kind of crackling, and I can handle this painting very differently than I was handling the other one because it's covered under plastic. And what this means, like when I ship them this way, what it means is that you will be able to put it on display immediately if you want to. You can always, there's a little note on the back that talks about like how to take care of this painting and stuff, because if you were to pull it out and touch it, you would smear it. It would get smeared and then nobody's happy. Um, so I am careful to put a little note on the back, but then I'm so excited about these. I have tiny little easels, these little mini easels that come with the mini paintings so that you'll be able to like have a painting if you choose to keep it in its plastic or get it framed, or frame it, I suppose I should say. Uh, it can still go here when it's in a different frame, but I think it's just such fun to receive something that you can immediately put up and display. So that's how the minis arrive. This is another one that I painted earlier this year and haven't had a chance to display. It is of a sun setting scene in York, Maine. I went there last November and I made a whole series of these in different sizes. So there's that one. And then the last mini that I wanted to show you is there's a handful of poinsettia minis. And just such fun for the holidays if you enjoy having poinsettias around that you don't have to water or take care of. I've even heard of people putting like taping a little ribbon to the back and hanging these on their tree. So um, and here it is on that little mini easel right there. So fun. And then before we move on to the next size, I wanted to say a word about pricing because there we go. Now, I was blurry, but now I'm not anymore. My poor camera having to try and go back and forth between a picture that's trying to focus on and then me. Um, I as I've become, this has been a really interesting phenomenon. As I've become a more successful artist, in other words, more of my art is selling at higher prices and commissions, the same thing. Um, it's meant that sometimes the work isn't attainable by the people um, who would love to own it. So what I've done in this sale, which will be going until early December. Right now the 5th is the day that I'm envisioning wrapping it up. I may push it. That's a Friday, and I may push it out to the following Monday. So that would probably be the 8th maybe. Somewhere in there is when the sale will end. And for the sale, what I decided to do was to take these, particularly these very small pieces, like so the 2.5 by 3.5 inch, the 4 by 6 inches, the 5 by 7 inches are the ones that I chose to make them be a lot less expensive than they were before per painting. And then on everything on the whole site, there's a coupon code that you can use to when you're checking out, when you've placed everything in your cart and you're checking out, that you can use to get 50% off everything in the whole sale. Like in other words, everything that is for sale on my website. And that coupon code is Grateful 2025, all one word. Um, and I did that because for two reasons. One, I just have so much art to share, and it felt really good to be able to give it for sale um, at at prices that felt attainable if people wanted that, and especially for the small pieces, because a lot of the small pieces are studies. They're not they haven't had the same kind of, how can I say this, care uh, given to them that I give to a big painting. Bigger paintings or anything from 8 by 10 and up are priced differently than these little ones. And I wanted to bring attention to that. And then the other thing that I'm doing, and I'll show you soon, is I've got some prints. I was in a conversation about a month ago with a gentleman who really loved one of my paintings and basically said, "Wow, I wish I could buy this as a print because it's not in my means to purchase this, to purchase the original." He said, "Not that I want to devalue this. It's incredible, the work, and to have an original painting would be absolutely amazing. It's just beyond my means, and boy, would it be fun to have a print." And I was able to say, like, well, okay, take me into that. Like, what would feel like a good size? What would you do with it? Like, how would you display it, whatever? And what would you pay for something like that? And so that has really informed what I'm doing here and what I'm bringing out in the sale. So I wanted to remember to say something about that. Okay, so now let's move on to I've got a couple of 4 by 6 paintings to share. The first one, we're still in pastels, so I'm still trying to be super careful, and because they can be quite fiddly when they're out of their frames. This is a painting that I made sitting in my car before I went and crossed England. In 2023, I did a solo hike across northern England, and I got this particular set of pastels. They're called plein air pastels, and the whole point of them is that they're really good for using sort of out in the environment. And it was raining, and I was in my car with the rain like hammering on my car. And I just finished a walk my husband and I were at a park near where I used to live in Massachusetts. And so this painting is of something I've always loved that you see there every winter. They take out the canoes and the kayaks, and they put them on these racks in storage. And then there's a sailboat like that's not it's still in the water with its mast just sticking up, and you can see some trees and things in the background. And it was such a fun, like, first one of the first things I did with those pastels was this little 4 by 6 inch plein air of Hopkinton State Park. Actually, is where this was. And then I took those same pastels to England, and one of the places that I got to paint while I was in England was in fact, I called this painting that I will show in a moment In the Bee Garden, because the innkeeper was sharing with me, here are the amenities of your stay. These are the things that we've got in your room. This is when dinner is. Here's the menu so you can see. Um, this is what's happening for breakfast tomorrow. And then in the afternoon, you could go, or starting in the afternoon, you could go out to what she called the bee garden. And I was like, oh, there's a bee garden. Wow. And when I walked out, what I discovered is that the signs all said, "Welcome to the beer garden." So the way that she was saying beer, it sounded to me like bee. And there were these beautiful, and it turned out that this was her co innkeeper. Like I don't know if they were married or even a if it was just a business partnership, but she was so excited when I showed her this painting that I'm about to show you. She was so excited to share it with her co-innkeeper because he had built the the what do you call that elevated rise the gardens that like are in timbers, right? So it's got a name, but it's not coming to me. Anyway, raised garden beds is what they were. And this was May in northern England, so there wasn't a lot in them that was blooming yet, but what there was blowing my mind. And so here it is. This one's called In the Bee Garden. And it is of, I remember showing this to someone else in Yorkshire as I was then maybe the next night or two. And what they said was, wow, you really did that well. The timber and the stone are so Yorkshire and the flowers are so, so accurate to what we're seeing now. So this was painted in a beautiful garden in England as I was crossing on the coast to coast path. And it's fun it's what I'm noticing is it's quite fun to take you into these little stories that these paintings mean to me. What else is art for, right? Um, okay, so then we'll move on up to the 5 by 7 inch category of paintings, and this is one that I did when I think it was still 2023 actually. So I hadn't been doing plein air painting for that long. I really started in early 2023 to feel encouraged or able to do that. Um, and this was one of the first ones that I made of a very beloved place called Riverbend Farm, and this is the Blackstone River. And you can even see the moon reflected in the river, also rising above the river. And there's something about this painting that just makes me so happy to see. And yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it to you, I guess. It just evokes what Riverbend Farm really feels like to me. And so that's another 5 by 7. And then the next one is actually, it's called a diptych. I love that word. I think it's the diptychs and triptychs are such fun concepts to me. When I've been thinking about this too, when I was growing up, we had, and my parents still have this where they live, a gigantic diptych that had to be 3 by 5 feet each piece, each panel. And it was this beautiful sort of blue and yellow landscape. Very, I would say probably moody or dramatic, a really, really beautiful painting. And like it's funny to think about. I grew up with that, right? From the time that I was probably 10, maybe, that they had that piece of art in 2 pieces in our house. And then here I am as an artist just reveling in the feeling of making things like diptychs and triptychs. So I made over this past summer, I made a huge commission piece that is 3 big 3 by 4 foot panels of sanded pastel paper. And on my website, you can watch a movie of it being made because I did a time lapse of it while it was being made. So you can see going through the layers and the result and everything like that. Anyway, I love I love paintings, images that are expressed in more than one piece. So I did an art demo in 2024 out in Colorado when I was visiting my parents, where they live out in Denver. They've just recently moved to Denver, or at that point, they'd very, very recently moved to Denver, Colorado, from the mountains. And I was able to do an art demo there, and the piece that I did for the demo was a diptych. So in other words, 2 pieces I called it, I think I called it Loveland Pass, or possibly the Continental Divide, because that's what it's of. So I'm going to try to figure out, it's very fiddly. Going to see if I can make it so that I can hold both pieces without dropping them and also bring them to you in the right order and at the right, yes, there we go. Okay, so as you can see, this is like, I'm trying to figure out okay, there we go. It's a road that is a little bit on one of these pieces and then a lot on the other. And then you can see the mountains kind of rising in the sky. And it is a blue and orange, primarily blue and orange colors that are in the painting. And gosh, I look at this and I'm there. Like I had not been, I'll put them down because I'm so afraid I'm going to drop them or something. But anyway, Um, I hadn't been over Loveland Pass yet. So Loveland, there are these places in the Rockies called the Continental Divide. It goes all the way up and down in North America, actually. Um, and when you're on one side of them and rain falls, it goes, for example, on the western side. If a raindrop falls on the western side of the Continental Divide, it flows out to the Pacific. And if it falls an inch to the uh, to the east and ends up on the eastern side of the divide, it will flow all the way to the Atlantic. And I just think that's always blown my mind ever since I learned that. Um, and to be able to be in these places where you are literally driving over the Continental Divide is amazing to me. And for I think 25 years, my parents lived about half an hour from Loveland Pass, which is the Continental Divide, where you can go over it on this place called Loveland Pass. And I had just never been over it until 2024 when my brother and I drove through it. And it just blew my mind. In fact, well, when I show you the print, there's a print that I made of it. Well, there's a pastel that I made of it that is now a print, and I can't wait to show you that. Whew. And then the last pastel that I wanted to show you, and I'm actually going to back my chair up a little bit for this, um, is one that I just finished. Like it is hot off the easel. Um, the other side of the easel from that series that I showed you before with the moon and the moonrise and then the other little mini paintings, I flipped that to the back side of the easel so that I could make this one of where I stayed in Spain was a beautiful little village town right on the northern coast of Spain, in a province called Galicia, which province might be the wrong word. A lot of times it was called a country. Like it's this wonderful little cultural area of Spain that it's sort of its own region in Spain, and I loved it so much. I'm already planning my return. I had a ball hiking and exploring and talking to people, and even if there was not a shared language, and oh gosh, was it ever fun. And part of that was I was talking to a friend of mine when I got back, and she was like, I bet you made a lot of paintings. And I'm like, I did, but I didn't bring pastels. I decided that I was going to see how it felt to create only in watercolor. And so that's what I did. Because watercolors are just very easy I have like these really fun little watercolors that are easy to travel with. They take up about 2 inches in my travel, bag. And um, now, obviously, you need water and brushes and something to paint on, but all that is a lot easier than pastels and the kind of paper that pastels require, and or at least that I like best, because I feel like you get the best quality paintings that accept the most layers of pastel, which is, after all, chalk. And so I made this painting of pastel. It's pretty big. It's about 16 by 20 inches. For me, that's a pretty good size painting. And I made it of the beach, as seen from this beautiful, beautiful hike that I did. Um, and so part of my retreat was solo, and then part of it was I joined a group, and that it all took place in Lache, this beautiful little village. I don't know if it's a village or a town. I don't know what the people there would say, but anyway. Um, it was such a special place to explore in a solo sense. And then when I went to join the group retreat, that was really special too, for more than one reason. First of all, there were people that where we stayed, the hosts of this place called Islo Co-Living, um, have just created this beautiful opportunity for people to stay. Um, and co-work, if meaning like there are spaces for working. There's like a communal kitchen. There's Oh, it's really just such a neat place, and we utilized it. We took over the whole place, so there were 8 of us on this retreat, and we were the only folks there during our week there. And the hosts, the innkeepers, were so generous with their time and with their I don't know, knowledge and enthusiasm of the place where they lived. It was just really, really beautiful. There are a couple who Each of them grew up in Galicia. One grew up, Inez, the wife, and co innkeeper. Um, she grew up in Lache, and this, in fact, the inn is in her grandfather's house that they um, sort of did some restoring to before they could invite people into it. But it's such a cool place. Just one little one little aspect of that. Uh, they flicked on, so Julio is the husband and co-innkeeper, and he grew up somewhere nearby, but I don't remember the name of it. But we were able to go and see the town where he grew up in as well. And anyway, he happened to be the person who, when we came in, he was showing us around, and he flicked on a light that opened out. The light opened out onto a plexiglass covered cistern or well that was in the living room because that was it. Apparently this was quite a wealthy household to be able to have water right inside the building instead of having to go out and get it. And that is still it's working in the sense I don't think they drink from it anymore. It's covered in plexiglass and they have like municipal water, I believe, or at least well water from another place. And you could look down and see, I don't know how far, maybe it went like 20 feet or something like that. And maybe the bottom foot or two had water in it. And Inez was sharing that that when it really rains for like weeks at a time, that gets full almost all the way to the top. It's like, wow, so cool. Beautiful stone house. And so I got the best of both worlds. And when I first explored the trail that led up the cliff that I'm about to show you, it was with the folks, the other folks on the group retreat. We walked from on our first full day there. We walked from the place where Isla Co-Living is, which is slightly outside and above the town itself. And we walked through the town and then went out to the beach. And I went a little bit of a ways up this cliff and out onto these incredible rocks that I just was like, I love so much. And I made a drawing from up there. And rather than paint it in my current, what I think of as my art emergency sketchbook, meaning the book that I take with me everywhere so that if I ever feel called to make a painting for any reason, it's there. And I made a scene of that. I drew it and without using paint that day. And then when I got home, I utilized some of the other paintings that I made with the colors in them and that particular drawing to make this. And it's on a board. Trying to get it over to the camera. Let's see how we do here. And so this is, and I can see myself just peeking out, peeking out of it behind the painting itself, so that I can show it to you. And I hope there's enough light in here that you can see it decently. But it is of standing on this cliff. I was just looking out at the ocean and the waves coming in, and you could hear the sounds and the waves did this really interesting. They're huge waves, but they felt like they were coming in slow motion just because of the size of the beach and the size of the sort of area where they were. This beach is huge. It takes up like the whole town of Lache and more besides. And then in the background, you can see some of the buildings, and then above that or beyond that, the hills. And I got to hike in those hills. Off to the side of this, just outside of the painting, is the way that you would get to the Sea Glass Beach and the lighthouse that are closest to Lache itself. And I was so excited. I put the way that pastel works is you do it in layers, right? So the early layers didn't even have a lot of the what's called the local color. So like didn't have the greens for the hills, didn't have the blues for the sea yet, didn't have any buildings yet. And I posted it into the WhatsApp group chat for the members of the retreat. And so this was after we were home, right? That was when I was making this painting. And one of the women said, wow, that really looks like it is it reminds me, I think is what she said, it reminds me of the beach and the coast with Lachey in the background that we walked on our first day. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, that's what it's of. So it felt really good. And I think the other reason something I was excited to share with you, and this does feel a little bit vulnerable, but I'm going to do it anyway because this feels like a lovely space to be able to do that. And thank you for being here with me as I do. I allowed this to be a very impressionist image that I painted, meaning I decided not to go for any kind of like photorealism. Like you can see, it's not an abstract, it's not a cubist painting or anything like that, right? It is of, and it's recognizable what it's of. But what happens when I do that is because I used to beat myself up for not being a photorealistic painter. And I've just decided to give over to the idea that like there's something special about my work that has to do with like motion and energy. They often look like they're in motion. There's another painting. I don't have an image of this to show you today, but there's a painting that I made of my son playing the guitar. It's up on my website, so it's up in the art sale. It's called Rhythm and Melody. And it looks like his hands are moving in it. It looks like his hair is moving in it. It's so cool. Like his body looks like it's moving, even though it's a static two-dimensional picture. And I've come to recognize that and kind of embrace it as a strength of my painting rather than feeling bad because it doesn't look more, quote, photorealistic. And this feels like this is the first painting that I've really made where I've just stood back and gone, yep, it's done. And I'm appreciating the style of it. So thank you for letting me share that with you. It feels nice to be able to say it out loud. Yeah, so this is my most recent work. It is, such fun to be able to share it with you. And it is with some relief that I put it down so that and clean off my hands so that I am not worrying about touching the paintings and fucking them up. Oh, I did just drop an F-bomb. I think I'm going to have to put a little E for expletive on this one. Yeah, so those are the pastels. Those are the pastels I wanted to show you. There's quite a bit more that by the time you see this video will be in the sale. And I wanted to spend the rest of our time together on the something else I'm so excited about, which is the prints, right? So I'll show you, I think first I'm going to take you into the pastel prints, and then I'll share the other thing that I'm just so excited about that has to do with prints. So pardon all the noise. Okay, this is the Continental Divide painting that I was mentioning before. And what's really fun to me about prints, I don't know if any of you have kids or have spent any time around kids or maybe remember this from your own childhood. You got to kind of play at things as if you were like a professional, right? I don't know if you remember doing that, but I've learned that prints are special. Like when an artist has a print made or creates a print of our work, we sign it in a very particular way. And I'll see if I can get the camera to pick this up. So in one corner, in like the left corner, there is, okay, it's a little bit blurry. Yeah. Well, okay, so in the right corner is my signature. In the middle of the painting is the title, just underneath in a margin, a white margin, like below the painting. And then in the left corner is the number and series and number in the series. So this Continental Divide at Loveland Pass painting, that's the print of it, has a 2-inch margin around it of white. And I did do that, like I signed it and I numbered it and I gave the title in the middle. And it is the first of 4 prints that I had made of this particular painting. And so that was so fun. And the neat thing about that particular painting, okay, come on, camera. There we go. Yes. Is that I used the one that I showed you before, the little pastel of the Continental Divide, the diptych. I used that to create this. Like I had that up on my easel at home as I was painting the one that I did that I just showed you, the Continental Divide in pastel, big one. Um, yeah, so that's a fun thing too. Like sometimes it almost feels like there's these series of things that get created that are really neat. In the winter, boy, the winter was turbulent for me, for our little family, and that's not a bad thing, but it certainly was dramatic. And at the time that events were unfolding, well, I always admire the amaryllis. There's actually there's a painting, there's a 5 by 7 in the sale that I called Amaryllis Walk and Talk because it's two amaryllis bulbs that they've sprouted, but they haven't like got their flowers yet. And it looks to me like they're walking along next to each other. I just think that's such a silly, I don't know, such a silly painting. I love it. And the first painting that I ever made, it took me like 2 years because of the tendon condition that I live with, which has gotten a lot better since then. And also, I've gotten better at choosing what I do with my hand energy. Not that my hands are perfect, but I do a lot better with understanding where to direct my hand energy than I did in those days. But that was of an amaryllis. And then this last winter, I'm going to back up again and we'll see if we can make it so that you all can see this. So I made this. This is a print. The actual painting is somewhat smaller than this, but it's one of my bigger paintings. This is an amaryllis that grew and bloomed in our house last winter, and it was so interesting because it just did it in a really measured is the word in my head, like uh, it just there was a rhythm to it and there was a sort of mindfulness to it. And so I ended up calling this painting mindfulness. But the other reason that I called it mindfulness is because boy, did it help me uh, in the processing and being in flow and energy of all that was happening. And then the other thing I love about this painting is that it's only got it only utilizes two colors, reds and greens, and they are complementary colors. So like the way that they operate is that they our eyes kind of dance in a special way um, when we see red and green together. So that's kind of fun, and I loved seeing that to see that painting, which is I don't remember how big it is. I feel like it's probably an 11 by maybe it's 9 by 12 or something like that. The actual one and this painting, I got prints in two sizes, and I think that is like the 16 by 20 perhaps, or 18 by something smaller than 16 by 20. Um, and to see it in that big vivid way was like, wow, what are we doing? This is really cool. Um, and then the third one of these that I wanted to show you of the pastel prints that I did um, and take you into was this one. And I called it The Way Life Should Be. It is big for me. It's a 16 by 20, so the same size as this new Lache painting. And it's oriented in a portrait. And I did, I don't know how well you can see, but I did sign it, and it's part of a series. And, put the name of it right in the middle there in the margin, just below the actual print. And this painting is of a sunset on a lake in Maine. I painted it um, sometime within the last year. I think it was probably maybe it was September 24 or August 24. I think it was somewhere in there. So just a little bit more than a year ago. And then I had it framed, or actually I framed it. I've learned how to frame my own work now. And so I framed it and I put it in a place where I would just see it a lot. And as my husband and I were really setting the intention of moving to Maine, we really, really wanted to do that. And we didn't know what that was going to look like or be like. We just knew that we wanted to do it. Like we tried to be really open and trusting about what properties there might be available rather than worrying about what the prices were doing or whatever, which, I certainly a past me would have done. To be able to just say, all right, I don't know where we're going to end up, but it's going to be there, meaning like in this painting is where we're going to end up, was how I would sort of say it to myself. And so the painting is of, there's these beautiful, waves, and there's these rocks that were kind of like in the sun partially and then not in the sun partially. So they made these really cool sort of, I don't know, ripples, and there's some pine trees and there's the sky, and it's a very peaceful painting. And to be able to say, I don't know what it means that we don't know what it's going to look like yet, except that we're going there, was really, really helpful. And it ended up, uh, so I want to get this right. We we looked at homes in Maine for, I think, about 8 months, that we were really pretty intensively looking. Like, we connected with a realtor. We had, actually, it was about 8 months after, yeah, no, so it was about 6 months after we started looking. We looked at many homes. Our realtor had done a lot of what are called virtual showings, which she would take these beautiful little videos, these fun little videos of houses that we were interested in, and she would send them to us. So we'd get like 20 or 30 videos, and we could go back and look and watch. And one time she was able to take us live through a house, because while we were in Massachusetts and she was up in Maine, because there was good enough cell service to do that. So that was really interesting. And there was just something not quite right about everyone. And sometimes I would love a house and Ben wouldn't, and sometimes he would love one and I wouldn't. And we always kind of had this idea of, I love you more than I love any house. And boy, there were some times where that was such a good reminder, that I, like, when I would be sort of feeling myself gearing up to be angry or to fight for a house or something like that, to just be like, wait a second, I do love you more than I love any house. And I don't want to live in a house that's going to make you unhappy. And to have that reflected back to me on the other side also felt amazing for my partner to be able to do that for me, right? And so we just were bumping along. We were having a lot of the drama that was happening when I was making that mindfulness painting of the amaryllis was about what we were doing with our home. In other words, we were having some serious remodeling done to it. It was about supporting our children to move out, because that was something that they were really wanting to do. They didn't want to move to Maine with us, and they knew that we were selling this house. And um, so all that was going on, as well as we were getting ready to sell that house, as we were sort of looking up here. And we had this buck wild experience where we I believe it was about 2 weeks before we put our house on the market in July, um, that our realtor up here sent us a message over, a phone message, and it said, "Hmm," was the only words. And it was a Facebook Marketplace posting for this house that we now live in. And it was so fun, because it was very human. I think we were, well, so I'll speak for myself. I was quite done with realtor listings that spoke of a house being nestled someplace or tucked someplace. It was like fatigue of marketing, I think. And not that, I mean, those folks are doing the best they can, and I'm sure if it had been the right house, it would have worked. But what really worked for us was to see the home that we now live in from the perspective of the seller, the owner, the woman who'd built it, literally like helped build it, and done so much of the work on it herself. And she's describing the acreage and the wildlife, and the pictures were compelling to us, in the sense of like, oh wow, look at the structure of that house. I mean, even this, right? Like the post and beam, a structure of it, that's throughout the house. And so about 2 weeks before we put our house on the market, we find out about this house. And maybe a week later, our realtor was able to come and give us a virtual tour, a virtual showing of this house. And so now it's a week before our house goes on the market. Our house was very, I would say, courted, because the area that we lived in was a very, very, I don't love the word, but a very desirable place to live. Like a lot of people wanted to live in our town and in our neighborhood. And the houses that were being offered were either $1 million or junk, basically junk meaning like not safe, with lousy systems, with $100,000 in remodeling or more that would need to be done once the new owner took possession. And that was just not attainable for a lot of families. And so our Massachusetts realtor had the brilliant idea of, and she's a wonderful realtor, and I think this is partly why, she supported us all the way through on, sort of keeping our vision for Maine and living here as our North Star as we moved through the process of all of fucking remodeling. If I'm gonna put an expletive on this one, I'm just gonna use that F-bomb a couple times. Like all of the decisions and all of the like all of the figuring out, everything is figure outable, but it was really tricky because we were just like, we have no idea what the hell we're doing here. And then just going through all the packing. There were times, and I'm going to credit my 21-year-old with being really helpful with this. There were times where I couldn't bear. We'd lived in this house for 20 years. We'd raised both of our sons there. There were even in a tiny house. It was, I think, the living space was, I don't remember. It was quite a small house as American houses go, put it that way. And it worked for us, but I couldn't believe the things that I was discovering, or like the boxes that I would open that I'd completely forgotten about, even in a house of our size house. And I came to dread, like I'd be like, okay, now it's time to, I don't know, go to the furnace room and start looking in there. And I just dreaded it every time. That I would say that never got easier, but I got better at just doing it anyway, just being like, okay. And the reason for that, or one thing that was really helpful with that, was my youngest, he's now 21. His name's Jay. I was in the kitchen, totally overwhelmed we were going to have to, this was when we were remodeling, so we were going to have to get everything out of the kitchen, and I live with this tendon condition, and hand stuff is really hard for me, really, really challenging for me. And I was just feeling all of that. And I was sitting on a chair in the kitchen, surrounded by open boxes, ready to go, and I couldn't. And Jay happened to be standing in the kitchen with me. And I said, Jay, I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. And he said to me, okay. He goes, stand up. So I stood up. He goes, go stand in front of a cabinet or a drawer. So I did. I chose one and I went and stood in front of it. And he goes, open it. And I opened it. He goes, pick something up. And I did that. And he goes, there, now you've started. And I was like, wow. And that there are some times where I still think of that. If I'm like, for example, there's still some boxes to be unpacked here. And I'm noticing that same feeling of like, oh, dread, But to be able to just, give myself a little chuckle and remember my Jay. And what he actually said, I said, that's really powerful. And he said, well, that's what's worked for me, because at that point, he and Max had moved out. And so anyway, we come through all of that. And it is now the weekend of our house was only on the market for one weekend. It came on the market, I believe, on a Wednesday. There were, I think, 4 open houses. Somebody flew out from California to be at one of at the open. Actually, they ended up going to 2 open houses, and they ended up being the purchaser of our home. We had well, I feel like it's okay to say this now. We had 22 offers on our home. All of them were well above the asking price. And it sold beyond our wildest dreams. I mean, we were like, wow. And I remember our realtor saying, your investment paid off, because what we had done over 20 years was we patiently given the house a lot of love. And people felt that. We felt it. We're feeling it here too. The same thing was done for us with this house. This house was built with a lot of love, and that during those open houses is when we were able to finally drive up and see this house. So for the first time ever to be in it was the weekend of the open houses of our house. By that following Tuesday, so now I believe we're into early August, I believe, or maybe late July. Um, so the house goes on the market on a Wednesday. The following Tuesday, we accept one of the offers. Um, and then at that point, we put in an offer on this house and it was accepted the next day. And then a month later, we had closed on that house and there was still some uncertainty around whether we would end up here or not, just because of, closing things and stuff, details. Um, but here we are. And the reason that I'm sharing about all this is because this painting, The Way Life Should Be, I personally feel like we're here and we're here in the right energy and the serendipity of it all. Because what we did was we said, we're moving there. We don't really know what that's going to mean yet, but that's where we're moving. And gosh, I'm so glad I'm glad that you're here with me to be able to share this story and hear this story. Thank you for being here. It's fun to relive it, if I'm being honest. Okay, so then there's one last part of the art that I wanted to kind of take you into, um, and that is the watercolor part. So I have typically, and I think this is true, I don't have a single watercolor painting that is not in a sketchbook. And so most of them are in so I have this is one of my what are called art emergency sketchbooks. This is the very first one this was the one that came to England with me. So my very first ever watercolor is in here. It's this one. It is it's just a little vase of flowers that was on a table in a restaurant in the inn of one of the places that I stayed. And from in this book, there are two paintings that I decided to have prints made of. And one of them is, I'm going to show you this, and then I'll show you the print. I got the opportunity in, I believe, October of 23 to go hike up my favorite ski mountain, which is called Wachusett Mountain, or one of my favorites in the East anyway. The one where my kids learned how to ski and snowboard. It's where we would go every Friday. Oh my gosh, so fun. And I got to hike it. And when I got to the top, I came out, or as I was just getting to the top, part of this trail that I was on leads you to the top of one of the lifts, the highest lift, which is called the Polar Express. And I walked out, and what I saw was you can see the lift, kind of going down. And the way that the lift chairs were set up, there was one that you could sit in. So in other words, on the platform that like people get on and off, right? Such that you were looking down the mountain. And I was like, okay. And it was open. And so I went and I sat and I had my lunch and I made this painting there. And I called it Load Here because there was painted on the place where people get onto the lift to take it back down, which is often done in autumn or summer. They'll have sort of rides. People like get married on the chairlift and stuff like that. They have this painted red spot where you are supposed to stand to load onto the lift. And where I was sitting, it was just behind that. So the painting and it was this really misty, overcast, funny day. And I love that shows up in the colors in this painting. It just thought it was so fun that day. It was like a magical, magical day. And then the other one that I made, the last painting that I made in this book is called Sunrise at Coast Guard Beach. And I made this on like the 1st or 2nd of November, sitting on Coast Guard Beach. And the sun was coming up and just flooding the sky and the ocean with its beautiful light. And there were these other people on the beach, and you could just see them sort of gesturing, and birds are flying. And I was like, what are we doing? This is absolutely amazing. And these are in my sketchbook, right? So these are not things that I can offer out for sale in this, you know, because I love the sketchbook, right? I'm not ready to say goodbye to that yet. I love looking through it. Um, but what I did do and what I have done is I've had some prints made up of those two. So here's Load Here as a print. And I made it basically a diptych because there's a seam in the middle, of the picture, the actual picture. And I thought I would rather not have that seam be a distraction. I'd rather have it look like two panels. And then here is the print of Sunrise at Coast Guard Beach. So there's those. And the last prints that I'm going to take you into today, I are paintings that I did. They're the Art Emergency sketchbook that I now have, in my bag when I travel and when I am out in the world and getting coffee and grocery shopping and whatever at the doctor's office is currently downstairs. So I don't have the originals of those to show you, but I'm gonna take you into these. So there was one of the reasons I was so excited, like all of my envisioning of Lache, Spain. Um, every time I would sort of imagine what it would be like to be there, what I was imagining was myself on a beach called Sea Glass Beach, which is it's quite a small, I mean, like Lache Beach itself is huge, right? It's like this big, huge rolling waves beach. And all of this, by the way, is taking place on a peninsula or a headland. It's not a peninsula. I don't know what you call it. Just like the sticky out part of northern Spain. It almost rounds the corner to the west, actually. So it's this huge headland, um, called the Costa da Morte, which means the coast of death, because the rocks and things are just crazy there. So Sea Glass Beach itself is quite a small cove with a ton of buckwild rocks, uh, very peaceful and beautiful at lower tides. And then one day I got to be there when it was a high tide, and I was like, I'm not even stepping on the beach. Like it's just too feels too risky. Um, but it was a beach made of sea glass. And I think it's so interesting. I was like, I cannot wait to see this beach made of sea glass. I'm so excited and over the moon to be able to do this and go. And when I got there, every time one of the first phrases that I learned was, "Can you please tell me where the Sea Glass Beach is?" in Spanish. So I was so excited to go there. And inevitably, the residents of Lache would be like, "Oh, okay, it's over there." Like they'd give you directions, and then I got to ask. There was a gentleman who worked at the hotel, so knowledgeable about Galician culture and history, language. He was telling me that there are authors, who write in Galician. It's like it's its own language and way of life, really. And I just love how present that feels when you're there. Um, anyway, I was like, what is it? I said, why do I don't remember exactly how I asked, but I was like, I'm getting such an interesting response when I ask about the Sea Glass Beach. And he said, it's basically like, I said, well, how is it made? And he said, well, it's kind of like trash. He said, centuries ago, boats would be coming by and they would offload their, broken glass or basically refuse. And that has turned into, first of all, it's turned into sea glass in the sense of like, it's not sharp, right? It looks like sea glass, is sea glass. But then that's why it's there. So it's not a renewable resource, one, and two, it's quote trash. So they're like, okay, whatever. But then the other thing I think that they feel is tourists come expecting something better. I can't even because 10 years ago, or a decade or so ago, it had a lot more sea glass on it because people, even though there are signs, people take the sea glass. And so the residents apparently hear about that. Like people are like, what the hell? It's not that great a beach, which to me, it was such a great beach. There's a I'll put this up somewhere and I'll put a link to it. I took like a 20-second little video of just the handfuls of sea glass that I was picking up and walking on and sitting in, and I couldn't believe it. And anyway, I went there multiple times, and one day I went there and I painted this, which is the sea glass beach, and this, like, instead of sand, there's rocks, right? And then instead of sand, what there is sea glass. And so that's all in this kind of like bottle green color. And then I don't know, I just loved sitting there painting this. And there was a little family there that time. So there's like, little baby in a carry pack on dad, and then a little girl kind of playing around in the sea glass, and the parents sort of looking at each other and hanging out. I was like, this is awesome. So this is the print that I did of my current Art Emergency Sea Glass Beach painting. And then this one is of the last one that I'm going to share with you today. One day I set out I was going to walk the headland to the lighthouse, to the Lachey Lighthouse, the lighthouse closest to Lachey. I think it was probably a couple miles away, something like that. It was actually really close to the Sea Glass Beach, just around the headland. And as I was heading up to do that, I picked a street basically and started walking up the street. That was the other thing is, on the first day I said to somebody at the hotel, like, is it safe here? Like, am I okay to walk around by myself? And they were like, yes, absolutely. And people like say hello, but you never felt, I don't know, I never felt, how can I say this? It was just a kind, welcoming place. Everybody in the markets, everybody everywhere. The restaurants were just like so kind and wonderful. Even if we didn't share a lot of language, there was still a lot of connection. I very much I used Google Translate, not to hold up to someone, although that did happen occasionally. I remember one time a restaurant owner typed in the Spanish word for mussels, so that I could see, oh, this is a dish that includes mussels. And I was like, that's not what I want. Thank you. So it did come in handy like that, but I mostly used it to make like what ended up being a very big list of questions in my notes, in like the notes portion of my phone, questions and vocabulary and things that I could say. And I would try to learn them before I went somewhere to anticipate what I might, need to be asking or talking about. And that really helped me. I think it really helped people feel like I was trying to learn their language. And it just, I don't know, there was such a generosity that was returned to me. It was so beautiful. And anyway, so this one day I set out for what I think is the Faro, which is the lighthouse. That's the word for a lighthouse. And as I'm going up the street, there's a woman outside doing some gardening, and maybe in her 60s, something like that. And I stopped and we started talking just to say hello, kind of a thing. And we shared almost no language, which was so interesting. And she said, where are you going? And I said, oh, I'm going to the lighthouse. And she was like, oh, no, you're going in the wrong direction. And I was like, okay, like, how will I get there instead? And rather, what was really the serendipity of this that was so fun is, rather than set me in the direction of the lighthouse, she took me to where she thought I should go, which was, I'll show you this painting because I want to show you, I can show you this from another angle. So it's called Santa Rosa de Lima. It's a chapel, and it's way up on the hill above Lachey town. And the chapel is just here along the edge, and there's like this, there's like a pole with a cross on it, and there's this, what feels like to me like probably something that's always on, like flames that are always on, And apparently the legend is that there are this pole with the cross on it is kind of an ossuary, meaning like that's where some of Santa Rosa de Lima's bones are kept. And in the background, way over here, is this that's where the lighthouse is, like around that headland, which I just thought it was so serendipitous. And most of this painting, for those of you listening, most of this painting is sky. And it was quite a moody, dramatic day. So there's a lot of like purples and oranges. And I had such fun painting this. So I painted it after Gloria, her name was Gloria, after she took me up there. And we just like we were walking, her little dog is with us, and we're just walking together and, talking about our sons and her grandchildren. And um our like I'm an artist and she creates beautiful pieces as well. And so we're sort of sharing pictures, and I don't know, there was such an interesting conversation. And I was like, okay, I don't know where I just felt so loved and safe, and like someone was going to go out of their way to help me experience something that they really thought I ought to experience. And I wanted to get this biggie back up and see if I can do it without hurting it. This is the Lache Beach one, and somewhere just to so if you're looking at it in the center of the painting, like from side to side, and you go up to the hills, just to the left of the center is a little mark that is the Santa Rosa de Lima Chapel. And it's so beautiful and so isolated is not the right word, but like so, it's just this wonderful reflective place in solitude. It is in fact along a route called the Lighthouse Way, because you could follow that path to the Faro that I didn't go to that day, but I went to the next day. And you can also follow it in the other direction to the next Faro. There's like, I think it's a string of 10 or 12 around the Costa da Morte that somebody's made a trail of. And so it was really fun to walk on that as well. And just, I actually called the watercolor that I did of the chapel and then looking out at the sea and the sky, I called that For Gloria. And I feel like I made it for her in gratitude. Um, yeah, so that's me. That's some of the behind the scenes of oh my gosh, of my trip, of my year, of what's in the art sale. And I think this is really where I'm going to leave it, with a lot of gratitude to you for being here and being along on the journey with me. It's great to be in this shared space. I do think of these as just you and me episodes, and what fun that we get to be here together for this one. If you would like to see the art in the sale, the prints, the originals, that is all at klockculp.com/art, A-R-T. And at the top, I'm so excited and proud of myself because there's a picture above every page on my website. Um, I will not geek out over that as much as I want to, because that took some doing, and I have a wonderful web host and designer who just did a beautiful job. Like I was like, okay, I put this picture up and then it took away the whole menu. Like there's no way for anybody to get around on my website. And he was like, oh, okay. So I like here's how you would do that. And I also he's like I went in and I just cleaned things up a little bit, just to make it look a little more professional. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so lucky that I have these beautiful people in my life. My web designer and web host, the person who hosts my website, or the company that hosts my website, is run and owned by lifelong friends, people that they were the first babysitters of our 25-year-old when he was 4 months old. That's how long we've been friends. We've been on vacation together. Like anyway, we're so fortunate. And So yeah, at the top of the page, you'll see more information about the sale itself. As I said, you can get 50% off everything on the um, everything in the sale, which is to say everything for sale on my website, with a coupon code that's there. And I called it the Grateful Sale. And that's because it's true. I just feel incredibly grateful for the opportunity to create art, to share art, to engage with you on art and connect with you on art. Um, Thank you for letting me geek out over art in this particular episode. That felt really fun. Um, I'm wishing you very well. And I think, right, just re to remember to say this, that the sale will likely end on the 5th of December. It may end on the 8th of December, but just wanted to make sure to have that be in your um, uh, memory is the wrong word, to have that be front of mind for you in case you do want to purchase something. You can do it for a lot less money before the 5th or possibly 8th of December. All right, onward, friends. I'm excited because next week I'm bringing you the first of these very mini episodes that just have a small little a little idea for you that might take some of the my hope anyway is that it would take some of the challenge out of this time of year and allow you to feel cared for yourself, because that, after all, is the point of this show. Lots of love to you. Thanks for being here with me, and we will talk soon. Bye.